JavaScript is a high-level interpreted language and has a core role in web development. It is mainly used for enabling interactive and dynamic content on web pages. To create a JavaScript file in an application, add a new file by right-clicking, then click New File. Let's name this file and add a .js file extension. And now we've created a new file. Then go to the HTML file, go to the bottom of the body element, and make sure you're still inside the body element. Add a script tag, add a source property, and add your JavaScript file. Variables are containers that store data values. The values can be of various data types, such as numbers, strings, booleans, objects, and more. When using a variable, information can be stored inside of the variable and used across the JavaScript file by referring to the name of the variable. When declaring variables, the keyword let will allow for the variable to be reassigned later in the code, while const variables cannot be reassigned. To declare a variable in JavaScript, we first type out the keyword. We'll start with let to reassign this variable. When naming the variables, we use camel case, which means the first letter of the first word will be lowercase, while the first letter of any of the following words will be uppercase. To assign a string, we use quotation. A string is just a sequence of characters. Next, we'll reassign this variable. And then we're going to console.log this variable. So this will just log the variable to the console in the browser. So let's open the browser. So let's open the browser. To open the console in the browser, press Ctrl, Shift, and I on your keyboard, and then navigate to the console tab at the top, and you'll see that we've console.logged the name, and you'll see that the name has been logged. Right, now let's try the same with a const. Const last name equals dough. Now let's reassign this last name to Joe. And then log the last name to the console. Now let's go back to Chrome. You'll see that we've got an error. Assignment to constant variable. We cannot reassign this last name. Let's remove that line of code and go back to the browser. Now you should see we get John and Doe. We don't want to log these two to the consoles different times. So here's what we can do. Remove the first console.log. And in the second one, type out first name plus empty quotation. Make sure you add a space plus last name. This is called string concatenation. Basically what this does is append this empty space to first name and then append the last name after the empty space. And if you go back to the console, you should see that we have the first name, a space, and then the last name. Functions are reusable blocks of code that can be used to execute a specified task. They increase readability of the code while being modular and reusable. Let's create a simple function to log our name. First, type out the function keyword. Then name your function. We'll use print name. Then add brackets or parentheses and add curly braces. Now in between the curly braces is where we define our function. And just take this block of code and put it inside the function. Now we need to call our function. So just type out the function name, add the brackets or parentheses. Now go back to the browser. Press Ctrl+Shift+I to open the console, and you should see that we still get our name and our last name. If you are trying to improve your coding skills and learn how to build apps on your own, check out dayoneprogrammer.com for learning web development and mobile development. Get all the YouTube episodes in advance, plus some exclusive projects. You'll also get all the learning resources for building the mobile versions of all the apps. The first 5,000 people to use the link below this video to subscribe to dayoneprogrammer.com will get 50% off their subscription for life. DOM manipulation. Now that we know a little bit of JavaScript, how can we use our JavaScript to interact with our web page? First, we need to understand the document object model. The DOM is a programming interface for web documents such as HTML. It represents the structure of a document as a tree of objects, where each object corresponds to a part of the document. In order to interact with our HTML file from JavaScript, we need to assign the element we would like to interact with to a variable. To do this, let's define our variable. Const blocks button. And now let's go back to our HTML file. And under the header, we're looking for this button. So we need to get this ID, header-button. Now go back to the JavaScript file. We'll say equals document.getElement by ID. Now pass in the ID of header button. Now that we've selected our block button, let's go back to the web page. So this is the button we've selected. Now when we click this button, we want to write the name to the console. To do that, we need to add an event listener. So get the name of your variable. To add the event listener, type out .add event listener. The event we're listening for is a click event. And the function you want to call when the click happens is the print name function. So remove this last line of code. Now if we go back to our browser and click this button, you'll see that the name gets printed to the console. We can also modify CSS properties through our JavaScript file. Now to do this, we'll select the login button. So go back to your HTML file, and now we're going to select this button with the ID of login-button. So we'll say const login button equals document.getElement by ID, and pass in the login button. Now let's create a function to change the color of this login button. Now in this function, we need to select our login button, access the style property, and then access the background property, and assign that property to red. Now we need to add an event handler so that when we click the login button, the background will change to red. So we need to take our login button and add an event listener. We're listening for the click event. And when the button is clicked, we'll change the color to red. Now let's go back to the browser to test this. Let's go to the login button. And as you can see, when we click the button, it changes to red. An array is an object used to store a collection of values. Each value in an array is called an element. Each element is assigned a unique numeric value called an index. JavaScript arrays are zero indexed, which means the first element has the index of 0, and the second element has an index of 1, and so on. To create an array, just give your array a name, and we use the square brackets. Now these square brackets specify that everything stored in these square brackets will be part of the array. So let's list some colors. For our colors, we have red, blue, yellow, green, and orange. Now let's log this array to the console. And you should see our array here: red, blue, yellow, orange, and green. Now you should see our array here: red, blue, yellow, green, and orange. Arrays have unique functions called methods that can be used to get certain information of the array or to modify the array itself. Let's start off by getting the length of the array. The array and the dot length will give us the amount of elements that are in the array. And as you can see, we have 5 elements in this array. So let's check console to see. And you should see that it says 5. To add an element to an array, we can use the .push method. So this code will add purple to the end of this array. Now if we log colors, we should see purple has been added to the array. And you'll see that purple has been added to the array. So now the total length of this array is 6. To remove an element from the array, we use the colors.pop method. And the element we'll remove is purple. Now if we log our colors array again, we should see that purple has been removed from the array. Now if we log our array again, we should see that purple has been removed from the array. And you'll see that purple has indeed been removed. So we're back to 5 elements in this array. Now let's talk about methods to access certain elements in the array. So this colors.add method will allow us to get an element at a certain index. So if we pass in the index of 0, it should return the first element in the array, which should be red. So let's see in the browser. And you should see that we get red. To get the element, to get the last element of the array, simply use the colors.add method, colors.length minus 1. This will give us the total length of the array, which is 5, and minus 1 because our array index starts at 0. So orange will be index 4. And this will take 5 minus 1 and return 4. So if we go to the browser and check this, you should get orange. The index.of method allows us to get an element from the array at a certain index. So in this case, we'll pass the index of 2. This should give us a third element in the array, which is yellow. If you are trying to improve your coding skills and learn how to build apps on your own, check out dayoneprogrammer.com for learning web development and mobile development. Get all the YouTube episodes in advance, plus some exclusive projects. You will also get all the learning resources for building the mobile versions of all the apps. The first 5,000 people to use the link below this video to subscribe to dayoneprogrammer.com will get 50% off their subscription for life. The index.of method gives us the index of a certain element in the array. Now we just need to pass the element that we want the index of. In this case, we'll pass in orange, or rather we'll pass in yellow. Now this should give us an index of 2, because red is index 0, blue would be index 1, yellow would be index 2, and you should see a 2. Now select all these lines of code from console.log colors.length and remove them. Next, we'll look at methods to transform an array. We'll start with the for each method. This for each method will iterate through the whole array, and for each element in the array, it will console.log our array, and in this case, it will be colors. So it will console.log this whole array. As you can see, for each element, we have the whole array being printed to the console. The next method is a map method. Map goes through each element in the array and performs a callback function on each of the elements. I'll just write a comment so we know that this is the map method. Before we use our map method, let's first add some elements to the array. So we've pushed dark blue, dark red, dark yellow, and dark green to our array of colors. And if we print this array to the console, we should see that we have 4 extra colors added. And you'll see that we have dark blue, dark red, dark yellow, and dark green. And we'll use this colors.map method to create a new array of color info that will store the information of each of the colors. What this map method does is it goes through each element in this colors array and it will check the name of the color and if the color is dark. If the color is dark, it will return true. If the color is not dark, it will return false. And the way we check if the color is dark is we use this colors that starts with and we pass in dark. Now as you can see, we have 4 colors that start with dark. So all 4 of these colors should return true, while the rest of these colors should return false. So let's console.log this. Console.log your color info. And you should see in the console we have an array of objects. And these objects store the name of the color, and in this case red, and if it's dark, which is false. And you should get this for all 9 elements that are found within the array. Next we'll go over the filter method. The filter method goes through the array and checks if each element returns true for a specified condition. A new array is then created with all the elements that return true to that condition. To do this, we'll once again define a new array for dark colors. Now what this filters method does is it goes through each element within the colors array and it checks if the color starts with the words dark. And once again, we should get these 4 elements of the array: dark blue, dark red, dark yellow, and dark green. So let's console.log our dark colors array now. And you can see the new array we've created. dark blue, dark red, dark yellow, dark green. Next we have a reduce method. Reduce allows us to take many elements and return one value. Now we'll use the reduce method to get the amount of dark colors within our colors array. This is called a ternary operator. What this ternary operator does is it checks a certain condition. In this case, it's checking if the color starts with dark. And if the color does start with dark, it will use this first set of code, which is count plus 1, which simply means take this count, which is 0, and add 1 to it. And it will do that for all elements in this array. So it will add 1, then 2, then 3. However, if the condition is false, it will just take the count and return that. So if the color does not start with dark, it will just take the count of 0 and keep that count as 0. If you are trying to improve your coding skills and learn how to build apps on your own, check out dayoneprogrammer.com for learning web development and mobile development. Get all the YouTube episodes in advance, plus some exclusive projects. You will also get all the learning resources for building the mobile versions of all the apps. The first 5,000 people to use the link below this video to subscribe to dayoneprogrammer.com will get 50% off their subscription for life.